Hello, all, and welcome to a new episode of FamLead, showcasing female leaders and role models. My next guest is a senior management consultant with deep expertise in telecommunications and strategic transformations. As principal in Kearney's Oslo office, she actively engages in client development and project work across Europe, Africa, and Asia as a core member of the firm's global communications, media, and technology practice. For nearly a decade, she worked across Kearney's Melbourne, Istanbul, and Oslo offices and has been a trusted advisor to multiple CXOs for their mission critical strategic interventions, including large scale transformations, growth agenda, digital and IT, innovation, and mergers. She takes active roles in Kearney's local recruitment and diversity and inclusion efforts. She has also been a frequent spokesperson on technology and women in leadership topics. Without further ado, please welcome Ceyda Haga. Welcome, Ceyda. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Alexandra. I'm very, very happy to be part of this.
I really appreciate it. I think that since the moment we started connecting, I know that you've been following the podcast on LinkedIn, and I really appreciate all the support. It's really nice to be surrounded by so many role models and be able to interact. So thank you for accepting this invitation. Today, we're going to talk about your journey into management consulting and a bit more about how it took you across the world and what did you learn. So I would like to start by telling people more about what does it mean to be a principal in one of the world's largest consulting companies.
Yes, so as you also mentioned, I work as a senior management consultant. I have been through the ranks in consulting business. Started as a business analyst, senior business analyst, associate manager, and now as a principal in Kearney. Principals work with both the client engagements as well as the business development side of our work. So we actively engage with our clients and we lead the project work, guiding the manager and the team on the project with our expertise. And we also lead engagements from a business development point of view, deepening our client relationships and basically just understanding the client needs better and trying to help them on an ongoing basis. So that's in a nutshell what a principal does in Kearney.
Amazing. And when we connected, you started your introduction by telling me how what an amazing journey you've had, starting from the office in Turkey and actually getting all the way across to Australia and moving again. And I wanted to ask more about your upbringing. Can you tell us more about who Ceyda is?
Absolutely. So I was born in Istanbul, in downtown, and I was in Turkey for my education until I completed university there. I studied industrial engineering and mathematics double major in Sabancı University in Istanbul. And then the turning point for me was that I received a Fulbright scholarship on my third year in university. And that took me to the US for my graduate studies. And I started my studies in Stanford in the US. And I studied management science and engineering, Master of Science degree there. And then from there onwards, I got into more thinking about what's next for me, of course, as normally you would do as a student. And I had a couple of options ahead of me. Obviously, being in Silicon Valley at Stanford, there are quite a few options to join a startup. You could also join investment banking, as most of the bright students might consider. And management consulting also was a great option really up there for me. And why I chose consulting at that point was that it was the notion of solving problems and helping clients with those problems that they are not able to solve themselves. And really being in this constant ambiguity and being on the edge of your comfort zone and see that comfort zone expanding. So that opportunity in management consulting for me was the differentiator, and that's sort of where I started. So I did my recruitment in the US. And then, as you pointed out, it took me to different places around the world, and then now in Norway.
Okay, so you moved to Oslo now. You live in Oslo, and now you work in Kearney for almost a decade. Is that correct?
Yes, I've been with Kearney for 8 years now, 8.5 years. I did my first year in Istanbul. So I joined Kearney's Istanbul office as a senior business analyst. And then after 1 year of project work, an opportunity came up there to do a project in Australia. So the original idea was to go to Australia just for 3 months on a project basis. But I ended up staying for 6.5 years in Australia, one project after the other. And I really liked the working environment and the project work that I had been doing in Kearney. It was mostly focusing on telecoms, so serving various clients in the telco and technology practice. Also moving to other places than Australia, so doing some client work up in Malaysia. I have spent 6 months in New Zealand, and this really opened up quite a lot of opportunities for me to be an international diverse consultant. And then as of last year in May, I have made my move to Norway. This was more from a personal reason. My husband is Norwegian and we met in Australia. So that's where the connection comes from for my move to Norway.
Amazing. So if I were to wrap up your experience so far, you've worked mostly and mainly in consulting, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But you've had so many different projects that you've added to your portfolio. Consulting is becoming more and more popular for all students to see themselves as a kickstarter for their career. And I would like to talk about this myth of consulting as the kickstarter for your career, because of course it is a great opportunity, but is it as interesting or as exciting as it sounds? And what are some of the steps that students should consider when they think about consulting as the next step when they graduate?
Absolutely. So for the first question, I think it is definitely as exciting as it sounds. If I had not been in consulting, I think I wouldn't have gotten so much exposure and so much opportunity to really improve my skill set. So it definitely gives you a head start in your career. If you have been a consultant for a couple of years, I think you can find yourself in a position where you're already engaging with the CXO, you're already part of shaping their agenda, and you're already part of having some real impact. So if this is what excites you, I think consulting in a very short amount of time actually gives you that opportunity. And of course, then a decision comes if you want to do this as a career and become a career consultant, or if you want to, take your skill set to somewhere else. I think there are a lot of people and a lot of ex-consultants who've also gone outside of consulting to the industry and become really successful. But consulting really gives you the starting toolkit to be successful in a business world. So for sure, I can confirm that it is not really a myth, but a reality, or at least it was for me. When it comes to what should students consider, I can only draw some parallels from my own experience. I think my own consideration was that if you think as a student in the beginning that you are not certain about what you want to do, or you are not certain about which industry you would like to go, but you know that you want to excel and you know that you want to develop. So if you're at this position, then consulting would be the right fit for you because it gives you the diverse opportunities. In amount of 1 or 2 years, you can get a taste of 4 or 5 different industries. And then you can make a more informed decision if you want to specialize in one over the other. So it really gives you the breadth and the variety of different topics that you can work with.
And when it comes to recruitment, because you've actually been involved in this process, right? As I've mentioned in the intro, is there any tips you would give students who are actually very aware of the fact that this is their next step?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you think about the recruitment process, it really for us what's the most important is your problem solving capabilities, and also a bit more of the what we call a cultural fit. So this is basically what we test most of the candidates for. For the problem solving element, it is quite important to have a structured approach to problem solving. And it's also quite important to also have a good combination of quantitative and qualitative skills. So it's in some ways a strong quantitative background, but also a qualitative skills regarding communication, being able to at least show some good signs that you would be able to handle a client, and we would not hesitate you putting in front of the client in a meeting, etc. So these are some of the tips that I could give, that the students should really have examples or signs that they can really show to us that they're capable of doing this. And also, it is very important to have good familiarity with the company that you are obviously interviewing with. We do ask questions regarding why they would choose consulting, or what's their unique perspective, that's why they are a good fit for consulting. And of course, for my company specifically, we would also be interested in why they would choose us over the others, or why we should choose them. So it's also a mutual conversation, obviously, that we would like to make sure that the students are interested in joining us, and we can also excite them as a company that they would be also willing to join us. So it's more of a two-way street.
Wonderful. And when it comes to lessons that you wish you knew when you started this process, what are some, I don't know, thoughts that come to your mind?
Yeah, for me, I think a couple of revelations along the journey of 9 years. First of all, I think it was very important for me when I started saying yes to a lot of these opportunities. I have seen my growth. So for me, it was quite important to be very open to these new opportunities. As an example, going to a new country, or trying a new industry, or meeting a new client, and really being able to be part of these processes and be part of actually what's coming as new. So this was a learning that I had, that whenever I said yes to something, I've actually have gotten a lot out of it. Of course, there's also a balance of knowing where to say no and set your boundaries. But saying yes and being having an open mindset, I think really helped. Another thing, obviously, that I would like to point out is the teamwork aspect. It is not. It is obviously important to be successful as yourself, but it's much more impactful if you're successful as a team. And it's more having people to go the next mile with you. And if you are able to do that as a team, and if you're emerging as a leader in that team, I think that really makes a difference. And that's how the students or people who are entering into consulting or any other business world, to be honest, it's to really consider as a group and as a whole, rather than very individualistic. And this also touches upon the people development aspect. So as you get more senior, like myself, I put a lot of importance in developing others. And I'm a firm believer in success as a team. So this is also one other aspect that I would highlight. And third one I would say also is to the extent possible, be comfortable with ambiguity, because consulting actually gives you a lot of ambiguity and a lot of challenges to deal with. You can find yourself on a plane to a country you've never been before on Monday, and this can be your next assignment. And just knowing that this can happen, and just being comfortable with that fact. And sometimes you can't plan a dinner with your friend just because you don't know if you'll be in town or if you'll be working at that time, etc. And just taking this as a component of your life. This is your lifestyle, and being comfortable with this. And I would say it took me at least a couple of years to really be comfortable with this and sort of get into these shoes. And now I would say, it doesn't bother me if I'm, being asked to go to Africa next month, or I can choose to stay here or go somewhere else. So this dealing with ambiguity for me also comes out as a central theme. And I would advise, young professionals in this business to really find their own way to deal with this.
Very, very well said. I have a question that might be relevant for, as you've mentioned, young professionals, but those young professionals who are not yet in consulting and they have some work experience and they want to transition. What would be your advice regarding the approach to take to transition to consulting and use those skill sets that they already have to basically sell themselves and kind of find themselves the proper team to join in consulting?
Yeah, so this is more the experienced hire, I think, concept that you are mentioning. This is quite important for us as consulting companies, because we definitely believe that these experienced hires bring a unique element that they might have worked in an industry, and they specialized in a couple of years in a particular topic that we can really turn into an asset in our company. So I would advise that they actually really play on that angle, that what they would bring in addition to a solid foundation of a consulting toolkit, because obviously, as mentioned, we would still look for the basic problem-solving elements and the basic, combination of qualitative and quantitative aspects. But what I would find is experienced hires, the differentiator is usually the industry experience that you bring in, and what you would add to the team that is perhaps not there in the consulting team at present. But you could really emerge as an expert in a certain area. And this would be my advice, that they should work on sort of impressing from that angle, rather than, that would be that would be their advantage over, obviously, the ones that are coming straight out of school.
Very interesting. I want to ask in this regard, how much does confidence matter when you are going to an interview and you're trying to share the fact that you are an expert? Because you might be an expert, you might have, 6 years of experience in an industry, but the way you present yourself and the confidence you share with the other kind of also lets them know if you are fit culturally, like you mentioned before, if you can go in front of a client. How much do you think that matters?
I think it matters a lot, actually, because one of the aspects, of course, is that the interviewer only has an opportunity to interact with you for an hour or so at best. And you would want to really give your best shot and make your best impression. And if you're coming across as someone who's confident and mature, and someone who can have their own opinion and bring their own perspective, this then translates into a great impression, where you can also do this in a team environment. You can also do this in front of the client, etc. So obviously, there's also a good balance of not being overly confident. That can also play a bit to your disadvantage, I guess,
Definitely.
if you do it that way. But a good dose of confidence, I think, would help you to make a great impression. So I would really advise to really play to the aspects that you shine. You are the best judge of your own strengths, and you would be the best one to really let them shine. So I would really encourage all candidates, or all interviewees to really have a dose of confidence, and just not be ashamed of showing who you truly are.
That's really good to start on the next thread of my questioning, which is around women in consulting. You are a principal now, and you've seen your career progress with AT Kearney, and I'm sure you have some role models in your organization as well. But definitely, when it comes to women in leadership, we have a long way generally to go in many areas of business. Linking with the previous question, do you think that women have less confidence in interviews, or do you think they know how to share their accomplishments?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. This is one that I had pondered myself for quite a bit as well, because now being on the other side of the table as interviewer, I sometimes really want to, take a break from the interview and just say, you can do a lot better, and you can really actually tell me what you've accomplished in a very simple, impactful way. So the pattern that I'm seeing is that for women, definitely this is an area of improvement. I think perhaps we are taking it more as more the humble way, and really try to let some of the success on the paper speak on behalf of ourselves, but we are not articulating, I think, properly what the success is and what the impact was. So from that angle, if I compare men to women in terms of articulating their successes, I would say woman definitely has perhaps a more way to go.
So there's more to the setup that meets the eye, meaning that for women, sometimes it's not clear that they should now talk about their accomplishments, and they talk about it in a more humble way, and they undersell themselves. This is something that I've discussed with different guests in the podcast, and it's always interesting to hear from different industry leaders, how is it that things go in your industry. And on that line of questioning, I would like to also ask, in your career as a woman who became a principal in a very big consulting firm and moved across the globe, what were some of your challenges?
Yeah, so luckily, I don't think I have had many sort of woman in workplace related challenges or discrimination, etc. I was lucky enough to be in a firm where I think the approach is very inclusive in terms of diversity and inclusion. We do have quite a big importance that's being put on this topic. So I don't think I have personally experienced anything as such. But of course, in terms of finding role models, and if you're looking for a role model that's female, so that's also another aspect. I think most of my role models actually have been males in the firm. And I also look at the role model concept a bit differently, because it doesn't have to be just one person as your role model. I think you can get quite a few different aspects from different people, and to date, all my mentors actually in my firm and elsewhere had been male. And also this gives a very good perspective on how males are seeing the world, and how it can be sometimes different, but also somehow refreshing, that perhaps some of the details that we wonder about, on some of the details that we think are quite important, might not be actually received as important on the other side. So I think it gives a very good combination that way. So one aspect, if you really look for senior female role models, perhaps that had been a challenge for me. But I wouldn't say that that really impacted my career, because I had great male role models as well, and I actually don't see that as a problem. There's always something to be learned from everyone, and also professionally and outside of my profession. There are quite a lot of people around me that do some really inspirational work. I, for instance, have one team member who's really juggling both the consulting work and a startup world, for instance, and he really inspires me on a day-by-day basis. I get inspired by my family on some of the challenges that they go through. So I think, in summary, it's more finding the inspiration in the little things, and taking that onto your baggage of inspirations, if I could call it that way, and then being able to use that when the time comes for you as tools, and being sort of reminding yourself that this is something that really inspires you, and then this is the way to go for you because of this fact, and really make it additive to your career and to your life, basically, in general.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to tough situations, generally in your career as a consultant, what were some, like, not necessarily an example specific, but what were some of situations where you've been through fire, so to speak?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you would advise people that might go through tough situations as a consultant? That can have many different ways, but more about how did you navigate those situations?
Yeah, actually, pretty early on in my career, I have a situation or a turning point for my career. When I first started, after a couple of project client engagements in our firm, I had received some feedback that I was not cut out for this job, and I should probably consider a different career. And this really hit me on the face, because I was thinking that just 9 months into your career, you're full of excitement, and you're full of what dreams of what you would like to achieve. And this was really a cold shower for me, to be honest. But then how I have emerged from that experience was that I try to isolate the feedback. So I try to think through why I have received this feedback, and what was this situation was about, and why this person had reacted this way, and really sort of think through in a logical manner. And also just look at my own self and really think about, am I really cut out for the job or not? Like, do I still want to do this job, or is this really a helpful feedback or not? And then I have made my decision once again. I've confirmed once again that I still wanted to do this job. But then the question was more, maybe not in this environment. Maybe I need to change my environment. Maybe I want to expand to a different group of people that I want to work with. Perhaps I should, be stubborn on the vision that I still would like to do consulting, but perhaps be a bit more flexible on the details. So once this was my revelation, I actually, as we discussed before, I have looked for some other opportunities to go abroad. And this is where the story for me of going from Turkey to Australia had started. And of course, when I first arrived at Australia, this feedback followed me because obviously we are still in the same company. So it wasn't, again, easy to just change countries and have a clean start, so to say. But then I think I worked quite hard to get over that perception. I have believed in myself that I still wanted to stay in this job because there were certain elements like helping clients, working in teams, solving complex problems that I have really enjoyed. So then gradually I have started getting better feedback, and I have, gotten my first promotion. So that was more a confirmation that I'm doing well. And then from there onwards, I have more accelerated, and it gave me more and more confidence that I can do this. And of course, I improved my skill set as well. But yeah, in summary, I think it's more you might receive this feedback, and you might, in some other people's eyes, actually not be doing that well. But I would really isolate the feedback and not take it very personal, but use it as a tool to ask the right questions to yourself. And if you still believe you should go all the way for it. But if you don't, then perhaps this was actually a helpful feedback. So just look at it from both sides, but at the end of the day, make your own decision, not let other people make decisions for your career. You are the owner of your own career. So take the feedback, but really make sure that you distill that feedback and make your own decision.
I absolutely love that. And a recurring idea that I keep hearing from guests is exactly this. Do not take feedback or things general personally, because most of the times it is not about you personally. It can be about your work. It can be about the environment. It can be about the project itself. It's not a fit. So make an assessment of exactly like you said, why do you think you received this feedback? What do you think you can change to maybe change the feedback the type of feedback you receive, right? So very, very insightful to everybody listening, not taking things personal. And I feel that my personal view is that women tend to do this more, take things personal when it's not about the person itself. And from my own experience, I used to think that the feedback was about me, Alexandra, you did something that maybe was not in sync with the company plan, when it was actually maybe a misunderstanding, or I was too excited and I started too fast and I went in a whole different direction. And then when I got the feedback, we're not really going in that direction, I felt a bit uncomfortable, like, do you not like my work? Well, it's not about that, right? So even going through these lessons, I think you get a lot of feedback from people, and you should listen and then make your own judgment. I really love that. I think it's one of the key lessons in this interview that people should take. And I'm very happy you shared that experience with us. So thank you so much for sharing your episode.
Yeah, I would also like to add actually another perspective that I usually take when I look at feedback, or when I look at the day-to-day challenges that I have at work. It might sound simple, but it's more thinking about, is this situation actually going to matter for me in 2 weeks' time, 2 months' time, 2 years' time? And most of the time when I realize actually most of the stuff that we develop upon on a day-by-day basis and really worry about actually don't matter in the long run. So one of the quotes that I really like is be stubborn on the vision, but be flexible on the details. So if you have set out a vision for yourself that you would like to see yourself excel, and you would like to take a particular role, or you would like to be an expert in a specific topic, if that's the vision that you have set out for yourself, there will always be feedback that you receive. There will always be challenges on a day-by-day basis that you will go through. But at the end of the day, reminding yourself constantly that you are coming closer to your vision. And these are things that you just need to deal with on a day-by-day basis. And in the end, when you reach your vision, this actually not going to matter. So this is another perspective that I usually take and remind myself constantly that most of the challenges that we encounter on a day-by-day basis actually do not put setbacks for us. It's more necessities that we need to just go through to really reach our vision. So if you think from this perspective, actually you can even become very free, because because then nothing really bothers you on a day-by-day basis. You can really be thinking much more long term, and you can really be thinking more strategically about like where you would like to go, and what you should be doing, and who you should be connecting with, etc., and how you should be developing yourself. So more internalizing and looking at how can you be a better version of yourself in the future, and not necessarily dwelling upon these what I would call like smaller day-to-day challenges. Was what was a really great learning for me along the way, because obviously I work in a quite challenging environment, working with clients on a day-by-day basis, leading teams. So you encounter quite a few of these issues on a day-to-day basis. And if this really takes up a lot of your mind space during the week as well as weekend in your free time, then you are really going away from being present, because you would be worrying about these in the background, and you can never fully be present and fully adding value. So that's really another aspect that I'm taking. And I used to like think about productivity, and I used to think about how productive I am during the day, how many things of my to-do list I've been able to strike off today. But now I've changed my perspective. I'm more thinking about how much I'm present, not how much I'm productive. If you really measure your day on how much you have been able to be present in conversations, I think it's really changing your perspective. Maybe you have not gotten a few things off your to-do list, that's fine, but you have had a very honest and very great, insightful conversation with your client. And I think that's really what matters, not one more thing that you could get off your to-do list. So for me, yeah, the relationship aspect obviously is becoming more and more important as I go more and more senior in my role. And being present in these conversations actually is what really matters and what makes the difference from my point of view.
So insightful. I really love the fact that you added even more advice to your previous thought, because it's really insightful. And I will quote this: be stubborn on your vision, be flexible on the details. I really, really love it. I think it's a very good quote to also get out of this interview. I would be curious to ask you next, what was the biggest surprise of your career?
It's an interesting one, I think. I think I got into consulting without knowing, I guess, where I wanted to go. I never thought that I would be going to different countries in the world as such. Even through consulting, I actually met my husband. So perhaps this now, where I'm standing right now and looking back, this is really the biggest surprise, that my job and the consulting career that I have really taken me to all these different places. I never thought I would live in Norway, for instance. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would be saying this is a joke.
Why move from the sunny Turkish coast to the northern coldness and Yeah.
Yeah, it's just expanded my horizons in such a way that I would say that I've really become a global citizen, and I could also now make it work in any country. That's how I see it, because I studied in the US for 2 years, then Turkey, obviously my home country, then 6.5 years in Australia. I'm an Australian citizen as well, so that's also a biggest surprise. I never thought that I would have a citizenship of a country so far away from my home country, and then now I moved to Norway. So this whole journey has been quite surprising in many ways for me, that I never thought that I would take. But looking back, I have a lot of things that I'm very pleased about, that I've actually taken these steps. So going back to, I think, the earlier saying yes actually opens up a lot of doors to you. And saying yes to going to Australia, for instance, or saying yes to going to Norway, and now it gives me a really nice new chapter in my life that I'm enjoying. And who knows what comes next? Maybe we will say now yes to something else, and then that will open up a whole new world as well. So this is probably the biggest surprise for me, like how this whole journey across countries has been.
And when it comes to the most rewarding activity of being a consultant, what would that be? Is it the same, the fact that you had to experience a lot of different cultures and work in different projects, or is it something else
No,
that
I
you would
would actually
name?
put working with teams really up there. I have quite a few people that I've read, a few consultants I have worked with along the journey, where I have witnessed when they first started in Kearney, and I have witnessed them, taking more senior consultant roles, and up to the manager role, etc. So really seeing them thrive and grow, and really taking a central role in that, and being able to keep these very personal relationships, and making a difference in somebody else's career, I think is something that really excites me. And I would say this is maybe the most rewarding aspect, that with a few couple of tips and few advices you can give, you can actually almost change the course of somebody else's career. You have a lot of influence, and sometimes you don't realize this, but obviously you yourself now become a role model, and this is quite rewarding. And I see there are at least 4 or 5 such examples, or 4 or 5 such consultants that I'm in touch with all through the journey. I'm also an official mentor to 4 consultants in
Wow.
Oslo. This you can think of is taking, obviously a good portion of your time sometimes. If you also include, all the informal and formal touch points that you have, but it is so worth it that you can really see people grow. And at the end of the day, in a business as consulting, we work in an apprenticeship model. So I also have a duty to bring up the next generation of principals and managers, etc. And this mindset really is what is very central to my job, especially these days, given that we're also working very remotely, and it sometimes can be a bit harder to establish these relationships. We have a new cohort of new starters that joined us, and some of them had to start remotely. Most of them actually we've been able to have quite a lot of physical interactions, but globally, I know there are cohorts that have actually started remotely. So this mentoring aspect actually is quite important to get right, and I take a lot of joy in doing this.
That sounds also like having you as a mentor is a very nice deal for everybody involved, because it seems like you are really engaged into it and you really are passionate about also giving back and, as you said, educating the next generation. I would like to sum up with what would be a piece of advice or pieces of advice that you would want to give to aspiring young leaders who want to follow your path?
Yeah, for me, obviously you are probably aware of the skill and will matrix. So you can be very skilled, but you don't have the will. But you can be very you can full of will, but not maybe be very skilled. So for me, I put the will in before skill. So I would say that if you might not be very skilled, but you would bring a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy, a lot of drive, being proactive. If you put this sort of a lens to your career in your first start, being very hungry for information, being very open to be coached by others. This might sound simple, but it's actually quite an important trait to have, being coachable and being responsive to feedback. So in the early years, I would really make sure that you dial up on this aspect. And if you anyway do that, then the skill is anyway being developed. So there is obviously on the job skill development. We would be throwing you into situations where you would need to develop that skill almost on the go. Obviously, we would always be there to help, but we would also expect you to expand your comfort zone. So in summary, I would say if someone has the right attitude and the right willingness to put in the effort, that would go a long way.
Thank you so much for this very thoughtful advice. I never considered it this way, so I'm very happy you shared a very thoughtful piece of advice at the end of the interview. It was such a pleasure talking to you. You have such an amazing story, and also you were so open to sharing with us all of the ups and downs, and also some very, very specific advice for young and aspiring individuals who want to go into consulting. So thank you so much, Jada, for your time. This was really fun. I hope you've also enjoyed it.
I have totally enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time as well. And I hope the listeners have enjoyed it as well.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Jada.
you so much.
Thank you all for listening, and stay tuned for more interviews with aspiring leaders.